So guys, we're back on the defense train again, and this time we are looking at troops. Hi, and welcome to Red Evony. I am Akayasha. You can call me Aka. So, we are at the last stop of our defense series, and as I said, we're going to be looking at troops for a good defense. Now, when it comes to troops, there are basically two main questions that people always want to know. What troops do I get for my defense, and how many? Now, in my opinion, these questions don't really have straightforward answers. Why? Because no two keeps are the same. But what we're going to do is I'll give you some certain core principles that you should follow when building out your troops for a good defense. Now, there are two main things that you need to keep in mind as we're going through this troop stuff. The first one is that your troops will protect your keep, but it is your buffs and your debuffs that will protect your troops. Okay? We need to keep that in mind. The next thing that we need to keep in mind, which is kind of piggying back from the first one, is that your troops need to be in line with your buffs, especially your refines. Okay, this is very critical when you're building out the troops for your defense. Now, for this particular one, it's a kind of chicken and egg situation. Which one comes first? Do you build your troops because of how you've refined, or do you do your refines based on the troops that you have? Either way you want to look at it, the troops and the refines and your buffs in general need to be in line with each other. So we need to keep those two things in mind. Now, when we're building out our troops for our defense, the way I like to look at it is imagine a sort of like a triangle or a pyramid, whatever you want to call it, and it's divided into three parts. You will have your base, okay, which is the base of your troops. You will have your layers, and you will have your top tier. When you're building out troops for defense, in my opinion, it's very helpful when you follow this kind of order. Now, let's break down each of these three parts so that we know exactly what we're doing in there. Now, your base. As illustrated in the diagram, this should be what forms the foundation of your defense. And for most people, not all, but most people, these will be primarily formed by lower troops. So you will have your T1s, which for most people will form the base of their defense. And then you can expand that into T2 and T3. Now, the way the game is played now, having a base of T1s, T2s, and T3s is not 100% necessary, but it is very helpful. Buffs in the game right now are crazy, and you need this foundation to help put your defense on a sure footing. Okay, now for your base, what kind of numbers should you be looking at? Well, that depends on the level that you're at, okay? For people that are just starting out and you want to build a base, okay, I would recommend that you start off with getting something like 100 to 150 T1s, okay? That can be calves, that can be ground, whichever one you want. Of course, that matches your buffs and your refines, but that is the number that you should be looking to start off with if you don't have anything at all. Once you get that, then you can build it out, get more T1s, expand into T2s and T3s. All right, that's the kind of progression that you should go with. And how far you want to take it will depend on the level that you're playing at. Now, for my base, let me show you the kind of troops that I have. And I'll give you forewarning, all right? The troops that I have are kind of different to what you would normally see. Particularly because I did this as kind of like an experiment and I kept on going with it. So, for my base, thinking of like the triangle or pyramid illustration that we had earlier, I basically went with a 3-2-1 distribution for my troops. You might not really get what that means, but let me show you. So, as you know from the previous episodes in this series, I personally am using a mix of ground and calves for my defense. Okay? Now, look at my troops. I have predominantly ground troops and mounted troops for my base. Right. Now, for my T1s, I have roughly around 300 million of each. 300 million of calves, 300 million of ground. Okay? So that's it for my T1s. If we move up to my T2s, right, this is what I have here. So ground and calves again, roughly 200 million of each. All right? And then we go up to my T3s. Same thing, ground, calves, this time 100 million of each. Okay? So that's where the 3-2-1 comes into place. And if I want to expand further later in the future, get more power, build more troops, all those kind of things, I will basically be extending this foundation further on. Now, is it necessary that you have this kind of structure for your base? Absolutely not. Okay? It's not necessary in any shape or form. But you need to have some kind of structure for your base. If that's going to be T1s, then you build out your T1s. All right? Whether you want 500 million or 1 billion or 2 billion, that is your choice. And that should be in line with the kind of defense you're trying to build. Okay, now the next thing that we want to talk about is your layers. The kind of layers that you should have will depend on the kind of defense that you are building. If you're a T1 trap, you will need some layers. Or if you're a regular sort of keep, you will need layers as well. The only difference is going to be how many troops do you have in your layers. However, there are a couple guides that you need to follow when building your layers. For clarity, when we're talking about layers, we're really referring to troops from T4 to about T10. Now, the key thing that you need to have when you're dealing with your layers is uniformity. Okay? It's not the numbers and things like that. That depends on the kind of keep you're building. The key thing is uniformity for the kind of structure that you're building. You see people that have different layers, okay? You see people that focus a bit more on their siege troops in the layers. You see people that focus a bit more on ground. You see people that focus a bit more on calves or rage. Irrespective of whichever troop type that you're focusing on, you need to keep that consistency when dealing with your layers. Why? Because your layers are the things that are going to grind down the enemy when they're attacking you. And of course, you're free to structure your layers however you want. Just make sure you follow that rule. Now, let me show you what I have for my layers. Okay? I've tried my best to keep them as uniform as possible. So if we go to my T4s, okay, you can see from my T4s right here, I have 3 million troops in there. Okay? 3 million troops in all of them except siege. You might be asking, why just siege? Don't worry, that's coming in a different video. So, 3 million in my layers, 2 million in the siege, and that's basically the structure I try to keep going throughout. So let's go up. Okay, these are my T5s. You can see them, pretty much same thing. We go up again, T6, okay? We go up again, T7, and you see a little bit of difference in the T7 calves, but that's because those are the troops that I use for joining rallies, okay? If I heal all the troops I have in the hospital, those will come up to 3 million as well. All right, so we go up, okay? T8, there you go, right? Come up again, T9, same thing. Come up again, and we look at the T10. Okay, so like I said, when you're building your layers, irrespective of whatever kind of structure you want to have in them, keep it uniform. Now, we move to the top of the triangle or the pyramid. Those are your top tier troops. In my opinion, these will be from T11 up to T16. Now, depending on the kind of structure that you have for your keep, these top tiers, in comparison of numbers, should be the least of the troops that you have. And why is that? That is because they also give up the most power when you're looking at the power exchange. Plus, if your keep is being attacked, your top tier troops are the first ones that will be killed off. So, in my opinion, you'd want to keep your top tier lean but effective. However, when we're talking about building a good defense, in my opinion, the top tier is the part where people tend to go astray a bit. And the reason for that, we're going to touch on a bit later in the video. Okay, so let's look at my top tier now. All right, so this is what I have for my T11. All right, about 2.5 million in there. We go up to my T12. Okay, you can see the numbers there. My T13, there you go there. Okay, T14, this is what I have here. And then T15, there you go. So in terms of numbers, you can see that my top tier troops are considerably less than my base and by comparison less than my layers as well. That's by design. Now, when we're talking about troops, we need to make a key distinction here between defending troops and attacking troops. For people that don't have trap keeps, and even for some trap keeps that like attacking, you need those top tier troops because those top tier troops are what you're going to use to attack predominantly. All right? So when you're looking at people's keeps, you find that in a lot of cases, the top tier troops are going astray from the defense formula that we are looking at. And that is particularly because in the people's keeps, they have troops that they are using for attacking. Okay? All those troops end up in your keep. So you need to keep that in mind. Those troops are not specifically there for defense. You need to understand what you're doing there. Now, for people that have trap keeps, this part is very simple. When you're playing on defense, you just ghost your attacking troops. Okay? If you have, let's say, one march for each of your troops, you just ghost those, and then by the time you've ghosted them, it's all your trap stuff that is in there. So, in my opinion, if you keep all of those general principles in mind when you're building out your defense, I think that you're going to have a very well-structured keep with decent troops that will support your defense in a very good way. If you have any questions about the troops or anything that we've gone through so far is not clear, please feel free to drop a comment down below. Now, the natural thing that you're going to think about when you're building troops and all that kind of stuff is how many troops do I need to take a good defense, let's say from a big player. Now, in my opinion, that depends on several factors, okay? The important one being what level of player are you trying to defend against? Because unless you want to build your keep to defend against the top level players, you're going to find a situation where you can't defend against everyone. And for me, I accept that. I'm perfectly fine with that. Now, I'm bringing this up specifically because most likely when you're building your troops for defense and building your defense out in general, this is an issue that you're going to face. Once in a while, you will come up with people that just outpower you. Okay, it's not a matter of, oh, my troops are not good or my buffs are not good or anything. No, they just outpowered you. That's it. Very simple. Okay, and for you to step up to the level of dealing with those people, you need to increase the power in your keeps. That means buffs, debuffs, troops. And in a lot of cases, that might involve you spending more money. It's a distinction that we just have to get to grips with. Now, this is something that I have talked about in my previous video right here. I asked the question about what it means to build a good defense, okay? So, if you haven't seen it, this might be insightful for you on your journey to building your good defense. That's it for me, guys. Thank you very much. Aka signing out.